You've been sitting in rooms full of people and feeling completely alone. The conversations happening around you sound like background noise from a life you don't recognize anymore. When your friends talk, you smile and nod, but something inside you has gone quiet, like you're observing everything from somewhere far away. If this describes where you are right now, I need you to hear me clearly. You're not losing your connection to the world. You're not becoming cold or detached. What's unfolding inside you is actually one of the most powerful indicators that you're about to step into a version of reality most people never even glimpse. The disconnection you're experiencing from everyone around you, even those you've loved for years, isn't pulling you away from life itself. It's redirecting you toward the truth of who you actually are. Something in you recognized those words the instant you read them, didn't it? That immediate resonance, that sudden feeling of being understood after weeks or months of wondering if something was wrong with you. That's not random, that's recognition. You didn't stumble onto this message by accident. You found it because you're standing at the threshold of a transformation that the majority of people will spend their entire lives avoiding. The loneliness that's been following you around lately isn't the universe abandoning you. It's the universe preparing you. Consider the last several weeks, maybe even the last few months of your life. Have you started noticing that conversations land differently than they used to? The topics your friends get excited about suddenly feel strangely empty, almost like watching people speak a foreign language you used to know but somehow forgot. You're physically present in those moments, nodding when it seems appropriate, but internally you're tracking completely different thoughts. The humor falls flat, the gossip feels draining, even moments that should bring joy feel oddly hollow. It's as if everyone else is still inhabiting a reality you've quietly begun outgrowing, except nobody's noticed you've already started walking away. This has nothing to do with superiority or looking down on anyone. It's not about being judgmental, it's about vibrational alignment. Your internal receiver has been gradually shifting to pick up a different signal, and now the old broadcasts are coming through distorted and unclear. What used to register as genuine connection now feels like attempting to have a real conversation while standing in a room full of static. The people themselves haven't transformed. The words coming out of their mouths are identical, but something essential in the way you process and interpret everything has fundamentally shifted. You've probably started declining invitations more frequently. Not because you've stopped caring about the people extending them, but because showing up to those environments feels like forcing yourself into clothing that's 3 sizes too small. You genuinely care about these individuals, but spending time in their presence exhausts you in ways that never used to happen. You walk away from social gatherings feeling more isolated than you did before you arrived. You find yourself reaching for your phone mid-conversation, not because you're trying to be rude, but because your consciousness is somewhere else entirely, processing concepts and realizations that feel too large or too foreign to verbalize. And here's where the confusion deepens. The distance isn't only between you and other people, you're experiencing it with yourself as well. The person you were half a year ago feels like someone you barely recognize. The desires that used to motivate you don't create any excitement anymore. Ambitions that once felt critical now feel completely meaningless. Activities that used to generate genuine joy now feel like you're just going through empty motions. It's almost like you're grieving someone who's still technically alive, but somehow doesn't feel like you at all anymore. Your family has probably been asking if everything's all right more often than usual. Friends have likely mentioned that you seem removed or changed somehow. Some people might even be expressing frustration, telling you that you're different now, that you're not as enjoyable to be around as you once were. Part of you wonders if maybe they're right. Part of you misses how simple it was when you cared about the same things everyone else cares about. Part of you wishes you could return to finding meaning in the conversations and activities that used to occupy your time. But here's what you need to understand. Nobody prepares you for what real transformation actually looks like. Authentic change, the kind that rewrites everything, doesn't occur while you're comfortable and surrounded by the familiar. It happens in those strange, uncomfortable spaces that exist between who you used to be and who you're in the process of becoming. The universe needs to create distance between you and the constant noise so you can finally hear what's been trying to speak to you from within. That's separation everyone keeps commenting on. That's not isolation. That's preparation for emergence. Think about metamorphosis in nature, specifically how a butterfly emerges before it can take flight. It must completely liquefy inside its chrysalis. There's a phase where it exists as neither the caterpillar it was nor the butterfly it will become. It's something in transition, something that wouldn't be recognizable even to itself. If you could somehow see inside that chrysalis during the transformation, you wouldn't witness anything resembling either creature. You'd observe what looks like complete disintegration, but that falling apart is actually the most sacred part of the entire transformation process. That's precisely where you are in this moment. You're in what we might call the liquefaction phase. The old behavioral patterns, the old interests, the old methods of connecting with people, all of it is dissolving to create space for something entirely new to form. And just like the butterfly, you cannot skip this part of the process. You cannot run back to what feels familiar simply because this in-between state feels unstable. The instability is performing the work that needs to happen. Your entire energy system is restructuring itself at the deepest levels. Your priorities are reorganizing themselves without you consciously directing them. Your capacity for shallow surface-level interaction is diminishing because your entire system is preparing itself for connections that operate at much greater depth. The casual small talk that used to feel normal now feels like it's wasting the limited energy you have available for authentic human exchange. You're not becoming someone who avoids people. You're becoming someone who's deeply selective in ways you've never experienced before. This explains why you've been drawn to spending more time in solitude recently. Not the lonely kind of alone, but intentional, purposeful solitude. You find yourself craving silence in ways that surprise you. You need space to explore thoughts that don't require explanation or justification to anyone else. You want permission to sit with ideas while they're still forming, to investigate feelings that don't have vocabulary attached to them yet. Being alone has shifted from something to avoid into something almost sacred. In those quiet moments when you're no longer trying to squeeze yourself into conversations that don't match your frequency anymore, something remarkable begins to occur. You start hearing yourself with unprecedented clarity. Thoughts that have been attempting to surface for months finally have the space they need to breathe. Creative impulses that were buried under social obligations begin to emerge. Intuitive downloads about your future start arriving with increasing frequency and precision. The distance from everyone else is actually generating closeness with yourself. Perhaps for the first time in years, you're discovering who you are when you're not performing for an audience. When you're not adjusting your personality to make others comfortable. When you're not compressing yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for who you're becoming. But this phase creates confusion because it can feel like devastating loss when it's actually preparation for extraordinary gain. It can feel like something is fundamentally wrong when everything is actually unfolding exactly as it must. The people in your life might interpret your need for space as rejection of them. They might perceive your introspection as negativity. They might confuse your evolution with mental illness, and sometimes their reactions trigger doubt about whether what you're experiencing is actually healthy. Here's the truth I need you to grasp. When you're changing at the core level, when you're literally reconstructing yourself from the inside out, every relationship and situation that was built around your previous self must be reevaluated. Some will evolve and expand with you, others will organically fade into the background, not because there's anything deficient about them, but because they were architected around a version of you that has ceased to exist. This isn't cruelty, it's not rejection, it's simply the mechanics of transformation. You cannot transport everything from your previous life into your new one. Some connections were designed to be temporary guides. Some experiences were meant to serve as bridges, not final destinations. Right now, you're walking across one of those bridges, glancing back at where you've been, while sensing something completely different waiting on the other side. This phase of feeling distant doesn't last indefinitely, but it fulfills an essential purpose. It's clearing space in your existence for connections that will actually feed who you're becoming rather than who you used to be. What makes this transformation particularly challenging is that it doesn't arrive with clear announcements. There's no instruction manual that appears explaining why you suddenly feel like you're living on a different planet than everyone else. Instead, it seeps in gradually through small moments that accumulate over time, until eventually you wake up and realize you're existing in a completely different emotional reality than the people around you. You might recognize it first in how you respond to conflict and drama, where you used to get completely absorbed into every argument, every piece of social gossip, every emotional emergency that your friends delivered to you. Now you find yourself mentally stepping back, not because you've stopped caring, but because engaging feels like trying to swim against a current that fundamentally doesn't match your energy anymore. The intensity that other people bring to situations that used to consume you now feels almost alien. Like observing people panic about a fictional story you can see right through. Your tolerance for negativity plummets during this phase. Conversations centered around complaining, criticizing others, or endlessly rehashing identical problems begin to feel physically depleting. You catch yourself wanting to steer discussions towards solutions or more meaningful topics. But when you attempt it, you're met with confused looks or pushback. People want to discharge their emotions, and you want to facilitate healing. People want to dissect what's broken, and you want to explore what's possible. The misalignment becomes glaringly obvious very quickly. This is when you realize the distance isn't something you're deliberately creating. It's something that's happening naturally. As your internal navigation system recalibrates itself, your energy field is becoming more discerning, more careful about what it permits inside. Consider it like developing a sophisticated taste. Foods that used to satisfy you now taste bland or even unpleasant. There's nothing inherently wrong with those foods. Your palate has simply evolved to desire more complex nutrient-dense experiences. The identical shift occurs with conversations, activities, and even the media you consume. Films that used to captivate you feel superficial. Music that used to move you feels empty. Social media becomes nearly intolerable because the endless stream of surface-level content feels like static, interfering with the deeper frequencies you're beginning to access. You find yourself scrolling less, watching less, consuming less of anything that doesn't actively contribute to your internal evolution. And this is where it becomes genuinely fascinating. As you withdraw from the external chaos, your interior landscape becomes extraordinarily rich. Your dreams become more vivid and loaded with meaning. Intuitive insights start arriving more frequently and with greater accuracy. You begin recognizing synchronicities constantly, as if reality itself is communicating with you in a language you're finally learning to decode. Ideas for creative endeavors appear seemingly from nowhere. Answers to questions you've been carrying for years suddenly crystallize. This happens because the mental and emotional bandwidth that was previously consumed by other people's energy, other people's problems, and other people's opinions has now become available for your own expansion. For the first time in potentially years, you have room to hear your own thoughts, experience your own emotions, and follow your own impulses without immediately filtering them through what others might think or say. But this newfound internal abundance can make the external world feel even more isolating. When you're having profound breakthroughs in your moments of solitude, then returning to typical social situations feels like attempting to describe color to someone who's never experienced sight. The depth of what you're processing internally doesn't translate into everyday conversation, so you learn to keep more of yourself private, which others might interpret as you being secretive or emotionally unavailable. Your sleep patterns might undergo shifts during this period as well. You might find yourself naturally wanting to sleep earlier or wake at different hours than you previously did. Your physical body is recalibrating alongside everything else, discovering its organic rhythms without the interference of social expectations or external obligations. You begin honoring your energy levels rather than forcing yourself through exhaustion to accommodate other people's timelines. Food preferences might transform as well. You could discover yourself craving lighter, cleaner nutrition or losing interest in things that used to be dietary staples. Your body is developing heightened sensitivity to what serves it and what doesn't. This isn't about restriction or following trends. It's about your system naturally gravitating toward whatever supports your new vibrational state. The relationships that survive this phase are the ones capable of adapting to your evolution. These are typically the people who notice you're changing, but respond with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. They might ask authentic questions about what you're moving through instead of attempting to pull you back to who you used to be. They offer you space to explore this emerging version of yourself without making you feel guilty for expanding. But the relationships that don't survive this phase often reveal themselves through resistance. These are the individuals who consistently try to remind you of your former self, who reference past versions of you as if they're attempting to convince you to regress. They might make comments like, "You used to be so much more fun," or "Remember when you actually cared about this stuff." They're not necessarily harmful people, but they're attached to a version of you that has dissolved, and their attachment can become an anchor that prevents you from becoming who you're meant to be. The most painful aspect of this realization is that some of these resistant relationships might involve people you love profoundly, family members who cannot comprehend why you're changing, longtime friends who feel abandoned by your growth, romantic partners who fell in love with your previous self and don't know how to relate to this new iteration. The grief of outgrowing relationships with people you care about is absolutely real and completely valid, but it doesn't mean you should halt your growth during this distant phase. You might also observe that your relationship with time itself changes. Hours can dissolve without you noticing when you're engaged in activities that resonate with your new frequency. Conversely, time might feel unbearably slow when you're in situations that feel misaligned. You become more conscious of how different environments and people affect your energy and your perception of time. This awareness empowers you to make wiser choices about where and with whom you invest your precious hours. Your financial priorities might shift as well. Things you used to purchase without hesitation now feel like wasteful expenses. Meanwhile, you might find yourself investing in experiences, knowledge, training, or resources that support your internal development. Your relationship with material possessions becomes more deliberate. You begin caring less about external validation and more about surrounding yourself with things that authentically enhance your life and support your growth. This transformation affects your aspirations and life direction as well. Career trajectories that once energized you might suddenly feel hollow. Dreams you've been pursuing for years might lose their gravitational pull overnight. This can feel terrifying because it resembles losing your sense of purpose, but it's actually your internal guidance system updating itself to match your new frequency. Old objectives dissolve to create space for purposes you haven't even conceived of yet. The critical practice during this phase is learning to trust the unfolding, even when it feels uncomfortable or isolating. Your system understands what it's doing even when your conscious mind cannot grasp the logic behind the changes. The distance you're experiencing from everyone isn't permanent exile. It's temporary separation designed to help you remember who you are when you're not being influenced by everyone else's expectations and energy patterns. So, if you're occupying this space right now, feeling disconnected from everyone and everything that used to feel like home, I need you to understand something crucial. You're not losing your sanity, and you're not losing your direction. You're discovering it. This phase of feeling separate and different isn't the universe punishing you or life malfunctioning. It's life functioning exactly as it must for someone who's ready to step into a completely new version of themselves. The isolation you're moving through is sacred ground. This is your chrysalis time, and just like the butterfly, you cannot accelerate this process or bypass the uncomfortable middle section. The distance is accomplishing something profound. It's clearing out old frequencies that no longer serve your highest evolution and creating space for new ones that will transform everything. Before we go further, I want you to do something right now. Take a moment and comment below with this phrase, "I trust my transformation," not as a casual comment, but as an energetic declaration, a signal to the field that you're consciously choosing to honor this process instead of resisting it. This is your conscious interruption in the loop of doubt. Type it out, "I trust my transformation. Now, here's what needs to happen next." If this message is landing somewhere deep inside you, if something in these words is touching a truth you've been unable to articulate, then I invite you to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to this frequency we're exploring together. This isn't about consuming content. This is about joining a space where transformation is honored, where evolution is understood, where growing beyond your old self isn't pathized, but celebrated. Click that subscribe button if you're ready to stay connected to this conversation, to this movement of conscious evolution. Trust that the people meant to exist in your new reality will find you when you're ready. Trust that the opportunities aligned with who you're becoming will materialize at precisely the right moment. Most importantly, trust that this feeling of being separate from everyone else isn't permanent. It's preparatory. You're not being left behind. You're being called forward into something extraordinary. But here's what most people don't realize about this phase, and this is where it gets really interesting. The distance you're experiencing isn't just creating space for new connections. It's actually recalibrating your electromagnetic field. Quantum physics tells us that observation affects reality at the subatomic level. When you change how you observe yourself, when you change what you're paying attention to, you're literally restructuring the quantum field around you. Every moment you spend in intentional solitude, you're not withdrawing from reality, you're rewriting it. This is why the isolation feels so necessary. Your consciousness is undergoing what we might call a frequency upgrade. Think of it like upgrading software on a computer. During the installation, certain functions go offline. Things that used to work smoothly start glitching. And if you try to run the old programs while the new operating system is installing, you'd corrupt both. That's what's happening when you try to force yourself back into old social patterns while your consciousness is upgrading. The system knows it needs downtime to complete the installation. The people around you are still running the previous version of the operating system. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you try to interface with them while you're mid-upgrade, the connection doesn't work properly. It's not personal. It's just incompatible code trying to communicate. This is why conversations feel so strange right now. You're literally operating on different frequencies, different programming languages. And here's something crucial that nobody talks about. This phase is also clearing karmic patterns from your field. Those relationships that are falling away, many of them were karmic contracts that have now been completed. You came together to learn specific lessons, to exchange specific energy, to facilitate specific growth. Once that exchange is complete, the magnetic pull between you naturally weakens. It's not failure, it's completion. Now, what we've explored so far is just the surface. But the complete framework, the 9 master frequencies that move you from survival static into conscious transmission, from seeking to being. That's what I've laid out in my book, Beyond the Frequencies, A Quantum Guide to Consciousness Mastery. It takes you through the entire system step by step, showing you how to become the broadcast itself rather than someone trying to manipulate the field from a place of separation. It's linked in the pinned comment below. Your energy field knows this, even if your mind doesn't. That's why you feel drained around certain people, even though you can't logically explain why. Your field recognizes that the energetic contract is complete, that there's no more growth available in that dynamic. The fatigue you feel is your energy body's way of saying this exchange is finished. It's time to redirect your energy elsewhere. This is also why new interests are starting to emerge. You might find yourself drawn to topics you never cared about before. Ancient philosophy, quantum mechanics, energy, healing, different spiritual traditions. These aren't random curiosities. These are breadcrumbs leading you toward your new frequency. Your higher self is dropping these interests into your awareness because they're aligned with who you're becoming. Follow them. They're part of your new operating system downloading. During this phase, you might also start experiencing what feels like time distortions. You'll look at the clock and be shocked at how much time has passed, or you'll feel like hours have gone by when it's only been minutes. This isn't your imagination. When your consciousness shifts frequency, your relationship with time actually changes. You're beginning to exist more in quantum time, non-linear, fluid, responsive to consciousness, rather than strictly in linear time. Some of you might be experiencing unusual physical symptoms too. Unexplained fatigue, pressure in your head, ringing in your ears, temperature fluctuations. These aren't necessarily medical issues. They're often energetic symptoms of consciousness expansion. Your physical body is literally restructuring itself to hold higher frequencies. Think of it like growing pains, but at a consciousness level. If symptoms persist or concern you, obviously consult medical professionals. But understand that transformation isn't just psychological, it's physiological. The dreams during this phase are particularly significant. Pay attention to them. You're processing enormous amounts of information while you sleep. You're releasing old programming, integrating new frequencies, and often receiving guidance from your higher self or other dimensional aspects of consciousness. Keep a journal by your bed. The symbols and messages in your dreams right now are specifically tailored to help you navigate this transition. You might also notice that your relationship with technology is shifting. Maybe you're less interested in social media, less drawn to constant digital stimulation. This is because your consciousness is learning to access more interesting information directly. Why scroll through other people's curated realities when you're beginning to access your own inner wisdom? Why consume other people's content when you're starting to create your own reality from the inside out? Here's another thing that's probably happening. You're becoming more sensitive to energy in general. You walk into a room and immediately feel the emotional atmosphere. You can sense when someone is being inauthentic, even if their words sound fine. You feel physical sensations in your body when someone is lying or when energy is off. This isn't you becoming paranoid. This is your intuitive capacities coming online. You're developing what some call claircognizance, clear knowing. Your system is learning to read energy signatures directly rather than relying solely on external cues. This heightened sensitivity is both a gift and a challenge. It makes old environments feel overwhelming. That's why crowds might feel intolerable right now. Why certain places that never bothered you before now feel energetically dense or chaotic. Your field is more refined, more sensitive, more attuned. It's like going from black and white vision to seeing in full color. Suddenly, you're aware of things you never perceived before. I'm curious, what's been the most unexpected change in your sensitivity during this transformation? Drop a comment below and share what you're noticing that you never used to perceive before. The fascinating part is that this isn't happening to you randomly. You chose this not consciously perhaps, but at a soul level. Before this lifetime, you agreed to undergo this transformation. At this specific time, you're part of a larger wave of consciousness evolution occurring on the planet right now. Millions of people are going through similar awakenings, similar isolations, similar transformations. You're not alone in this. Even though it feels lonely, you're part of a collective shift. This is why the right people will find you at the right time. You're being energetically repositioned. As your frequency changes, you're broadcasting a different signal. People who resonate with that signal will be magnetically drawn to you. Opportunities that match that signal will appear. Situations that support that frequency will materialize. You don't have to force it or figure it out. You just have to trust the recalibration that's happening. The isolation is temporary, but the transformation is permanent. You're not going back to who you were. that version of you has been composted. It's feeding the soil from which your new self is growing. Grieve it if you need to. Honor what that version of you accomplished, but understand that you've outgrown it the way a snake outgrows its skin. You cannot fit back into it no matter how hard you try. So, what do you do with all this? How do you navigate this phase practically? First, stop fighting it. Stop trying to force yourself back into old patterns that no longer fit. Stop pretending you're fine in situations that drain you. Stop performing versions of yourself that no longer exist just to make other people comfortable. The discomfort of authenticity is far less damaging than the slow death of pretending. Second, create sacred space for yourself daily. Even if it's just 15 minutes time where you're not consuming content, not interacting with others, not doing anything productive, just being, just breathing, just allowing your system to recalibrate without interference. This is not luxury, this is necessity during transformation. Third, start documenting this journey. Write, record, voice notes, create art, whatever allows you to capture what you're experiencing. You're moving through something profound. Your future self will want to remember this, and others going through similar experiences will benefit from your testimony. Your transformation isn't just personal, it's archetypal. It's part of a larger pattern. Fourth, be gentle with yourself when you slip back into old patterns. This isn't a linear process. You'll have days where you feel completely aligned and days where you feel like you've regressed entirely. That's normal. Transformation spirals. You revisit old territories but from higher vantage points. Every return teaches you something new. Fifth, trust your impulses more than external advice. People who haven't undergone this kind of transformation cannot give you accurate guidance for it. They mean well, but their maps don't match the territory you're navigating. Your own inner knowing is more reliable right now than anyone else's opinion. Practice listening to it. Practice trusting it even when it doesn't make logical sense. And finally, before we close, I want you to drop one word in the comments. One word that captures the energy or intention you're choosing as you move forward from here. Not a word that describes where you've been, but a word that represents where you're going. This is your energetic signature to the quantum field. One word, type it below. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Not just to stay connected, but to stay coherent, to stay aligned with this frequency of transformation and growth. Because here's the truth. The more of us who choose to honor this process, who refuse to shrink back into old patterns, who trust the dissolution and rebirth happening inside us, the more the world around us begins to reflect that possibility. We're not just transforming individually, we're transforming collectively, and your willingness to stay in this process contributes to the larger shift. The next time someone asks you why you're so different lately, you'll know exactly what to tell them. You're not different. You're finally becoming who you've always been beneath all the layers of conditioning and expectation and performance. And that person, that authentic self that's emerging from this distant phase, is going to create a reality more aligned and more beautiful than anything you could have accessed from your old frequency. The distance was never about moving away from love. It was about moving toward the right kind of love, the authentic kind, the frequency-matched kind, the kind that doesn't require you to diminish yourself to receive it. And it's closer than you think. It's already here, actually, waiting inside the silence you've been learning to embrace. The isolation was the invitation, and you've been brave enough to accept it. But let's talk about something that most spiritual teachers won't tell you because it sounds too confronting. This transformation you're moving through isn't just about becoming a better version of yourself. It's about becoming unrecognizable to your former self. It's about shedding so many layers that when you look in the mirror 6 months from now, you'll see someone whose eyes hold a different kind of knowing. Someone who moves through the world with a different quality of presence. Someone who can no longer pretend that the shallow end of life is satisfying. This is what makes this phase so disorienting. You're not just changing your opinions or updating your preferences. You're undergoing an ontological shift, a change in the very nature of your being. The foundational assumptions you've held about reality, about relationships, about success, about happiness, about meaning itself are all being dismantled and reconstructed. You're not renovating the house. You're demolishing it and building something entirely new on the same foundation. And here's what nobody prepares you for. This process has physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual dimensions all activating simultaneously. Your body is releasing stored trauma and old cellular memories. Your emotions are surfacing years of suppressed material that needs to be processed and released. Your mind is questioning every belief system you've ever adopted, and your spirit is expanding beyond the limitations of identity you've been operating within. All of this is happening at once. No wonder you feel exhausted. No wonder you need so much alone time. You're essentially being rebuilt from the ground up while still trying to function in daily life. This is also why certain foods suddenly don't appeal to you anymore. Your body is literally too refined to process dense, heavy, low vibrational nutrition. This is why certain music suddenly sounds grating while other frequencies make you want to cry. Your emotional body is attuning to different resonances. This is why certain thoughts feel almost painful to think now, while other contemplations feel nourishing. Your mental body is upgrading its operating parameters. And this is why certain spiritual concepts that used to seem abstract or irrelevant now feel like the most important truths you've ever encountered. Your spiritual body is coming online. Let's go deeper into what's happening energetically, because this will help you understand why you can't just push through this phase and return to normal. In energy work, we understand that every human being has multiple energy bodies layered around the physical form. The emotional body, the mental body, the spiritual body, these aren't metaphors, they're actual fields of organized energy that interpenetrate with your physical body. During a transformation like this, all these bodies are simultaneously undergoing purification and recalibration. Think of it like this. You've been living your entire life with a certain energetic configuration. Your chakras have been spinning at certain speeds. Your auric field has been vibrating at a certain frequency. Your meridians have been conducting energy in habitual patterns. This configuration attracted certain people, certain opportunities, certain experiences into your life. It was a stable system, not necessarily a healthy system, but stable. Now that stability is being disrupted, your entire energetic system is being upgraded to hold more light, more information, more consciousness. But to do that, the old configuration has to be dissolved first. This is why everything feels chaotic. The old system is breaking down before the new one is fully established. You're in between frequencies, and in that in-between space, you naturally feel unstable, uncertain, disconnected. The people who are falling away from your life, they were frequency matched to your old configuration. There's no judgment in that. It's just energetic mechanics. As your frequency shifts, the magnetic resonance you had with certain people weakens. You're literally no longer a vibrational match. Meanwhile, new people who match your emerging frequency haven't appeared yet because you're still in the transition. You're broadcasting a mixed signal, part old frequency, part new frequency. Once you stabilize in your new configuration, the matching people will appear. But right now, you're in the void between the old connections and the new ones. This void space is sacred, though it doesn't feel that way. In shamanic traditions, this is called the liminal space, the threshold between worlds. It's where all transformation happens. It's uncomfortable by design. If it were comfortable, you'd want to stay there. But you're not meant to stay there, you're meant to move through it. The discomfort is what keeps you moving, keeps you growing, keeps you from stagnating in the in-between. During this liminal phase, you might experience what feels like a dark night of the soul. Everything that gave your life meaning suddenly feels meaningless. Your sense of purpose evaporates. Your identity destabilizes. You might find yourself asking questions like, who am I really? What am I doing with my life? Does any of this matter? These questions feel existential and frightening, but they're actually signs that you're breaking through to new levels of consciousness. The dark night of the soul isn't depression, though it can look similar from the outside. Depression is a suppression of life force. The dark night is actually an eruption of life force that's dismantling everything false so that only what's true remains. It's your consciousness burning through illusions. It's painful because you're attached to those illusions. You've built your entire sense of self around them. Watching them burn feels like watching yourself die, and in a sense you are. The false self is dying so the true self can emerge. This is why trying to return to your old life doesn't work. You can't unknow what you now know. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can try to pretend, try to fit back into the old patterns, but it will feel like suffocating. It will feel like betraying something essential in yourself. You've tasted a different quality of consciousness and everything else tastes like cardboard. Now, some of you are probably experiencing intense emotions during this phase. Waves of grief, anger, fear that seem to come out of nowhere. This is what we call purging. Your emotional body is releasing years, sometimes lifetimes, of stored emotional material. Every emotion you ever suppressed, every feeling you ever denied, every reaction you ever stuffed down is now surfacing to be felt, acknowledged, and released. It's not pleasant, but it's necessary. You cannot carry old emotional baggage into your new frequency. It has to be cleared. The key with these emotional waves is not to make them mean something about you or your progress. They're not evidence that you're regressing or that something is wrong. They're evidence that your system is working correctly, that it's clearing out old material to make room for new energy. Feel them fully, let them move through you. Don't try to fix them or understand them or make them stop. Just witness them with compassion and let them pass. You might also be experiencing moments of profound clarity followed by periods of confusion. This is normal. Your consciousness is expanding and contracting like a breathing rhythm. The expansion brings insight and understanding. The contraction gives you time to integrate what you've learned. Both phases are necessary. Don't judge yourself when you're in the contraction. That's when the real work of integration is happening beneath the surface. Here's something else that's probably happening that you might not have connected to this transformation. Your relationship with authority is changing. Rules and structures that you used to follow without question now feel arbitrary or oppressive. Authority figures you used to respect automatically now have to earn that respect through demonstrated wisdom rather than just title or position. You're developing what we might call sovereign consciousness. The recognition that the highest authority in your life is your own inner knowing, your own direct connection to source. This can create challenges, especially if you're in hierarchical work environments or traditional family structures. You're less willing to comply with things that don't make sense to you. You're less willing to suppress your truth to keep the peace. You're less willing to participate in systems that feel misaligned with your values. This doesn't mean you become reckless or rebellious for rebellion's sake. It means you develop discernment, you choose your battles, you learn to navigate systems strategically while maintaining internal integrity. Your relationship with time is also undergoing a profound shift that goes even deeper than what we discussed earlier. You're beginning to understand experientially, not just intellectually, that time is far more fluid and malleable than you were taught. You're starting to notice that when you're in flow states in alignment with your true frequency, you seem to have more time, things happen faster, synchronicities accelerate. Meanwhile, when you're out of alignment, time feels heavy and stuck. This isn't your imagination. This is you beginning to work with quantum time rather than just linear time. In quantum physics, time doesn't exist the way we typically think of it. Past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously in the quantum field. It's only our observation, our consciousness that collapses the infinite possibilities into one experienced timeline. As your consciousness expands, you gain more influence over which timeline you're experiencing. You're learning, whether consciously or unconsciously, to navigate probability streams. This is the real mechanism behind manifestation, behind reality creation. You're not attracting things from outside yourself. You're selecting which version of reality you're going to experience from the infinite versions that already exist. This is why the isolation phase is so crucial. You need to separate from the collective consensus, reality, long enough to remember that you have choice in what you experience. As long as you're constantly plugged into other people's beliefs about reality, you're unconsciously agreeing to experience the reality they're creating. But in solitude, you start to remember your own creative power. You start to notice how your internal state directly affects your external experience. You start to experiment with consciously choosing your frequency and watching how reality responds. Some of you have probably started noticing that when you think about someone, they text you. When you need specific information, it appears seemingly by coincidence. When you wonder about something, the answer shows up in the next conversation you have or article you read. These aren't coincidences. These are confirmations that you're developing energetic coherence. Your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs are aligning, creating a unified field that reality responds to more readily. What's one synchronicity you've experienced recently that felt like confirmation you're on the right path? Share it in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. This coherence is what people sometimes call being in the flow or in the zone. But it's not something that just randomly happens to you. It's a state you can learn to cultivate intentionally. And this transformation you're moving through is essentially training you to sustain that state for longer and longer periods until it becomes your baseline rather than a peak experience. The relationships that are ending or shifting during this phase, they couldn't exist in this coherent state. They were built on fragmentation, on different parts of you showing up in different contexts, on performance and adaptation and suppression. As you become more integrated, more whole, more authentically yourself, those fragmented relationships can't be maintained. They simply can't match the frequency of wholeness. This is why it's so important to not try to hold on to relationships that are naturally completing. You're not abandoning people. You're honoring the truth of what is. Some relationships were meant to be seasonal. They served a purpose, taught you what you needed to learn, helped you grow in specific ways, and now the season is over. Trying to force them to continue is like trying to keep winter from turning into spring. It goes against the natural cycle, and here's what will happen as you stabilize in your new frequency. The right people will appear with an ease that will astound you. You won't have to chase connection or convince people to understand you or work hard to be seen. You'll simply resonate, and that resonance will be obvious and mutual and effortless. These new connections will feel like coming home, like finding your tribe, like speaking your native language after years of trying to communicate in a foreign tongue. But you cannot rush this. You cannot skip the dissolution phase and jump straight to the reconstruction. The universe is not being cruel by making you go through this isolation. It's being precise. Every moment of discomfort is strategically placed to help you release what needs to be released and become who you need to become. Trust the timing, trust the process, trust that your higher self, your soul, the universe, whatever you want to call it, knows exactly what it's doing. If this message has shifted something inside you, consider watching this again tomorrow morning to anchor these frequencies deeper into your field, or share it with someone who's been feeling this same inexplicable distance. When you share consciousness expanding content like this, you're not just helping them. You're actually strengthening your own energetic alignment and creating ripples in the collective field that accelerate transformation for everyone involved. You are not lost, you are in metamorphosis, and metamorphosis requires the complete dissolution of the old form before the new form can emerge. Let yourself dissolve, let yourself be remade, let yourself become something you never imagined possible. Now, if you're starting to recognize these synchronicities more frequently, if you're noticing patterns that feel like the universe is speaking directly to you, you need to understand what's actually happening at the quantum level. There's a specific mechanism behind why reality begins responding to you differently once you reach this stage of transformation, and it has everything to do with how observation itself restructures the field. I've created a complete breakdown of this in the video. When you understand synchronicity, everything about your reality changes. It reveals the hidden architecture behind these meaningful coincidences and shows you how to work with them intentionally to accelerate your evolution. Watch that